they're sharper. That's probably what you do. But there are potential downsides. Interestingly, the first thought was, well, that can't be very good for your microbiome because they rely on vegetable material to a large part. But when we've looked at the microbiome of after keto diets, it's actually, there's some good guys that re-emerge with a keto diet. So it's a mixed bag. The only thing is that when you don't have as many plants in your diet, then there's slightly more strain on things like liver and kidney function. So someone who's taking keto for a long term, it's always a good idea to check that they're okay. And some of the more long-term concerns have been around kidney, because if there's a lot more of the animal-based material in food, then can be more hard work for the kidney. So it's always worth checking that those functions are doing well. But I come back to the point, there is no one size fits all. We are omnivores. We're designed to eat almost anything.
My girlfriend, she's doing keto as well, and she noticed that her menstrual cycle became more regular.
Yes.
Which she was shocked by it. And she's really done a lot of A/B testing over the last couple of years. And whenever she's in a ketogenic diet, very low carb, very low sugar diet for 6 weeks, she was shocked that she could predict the day when her period would come. And outside of that, sometimes it's really varying.
Yeah. Well, there's a very good point about keto. One of the most effective things that keto does is it reduces insulin resistance, which is something that most of us suffer as we get older and larger, as we get through our life. Insulin is the hormone that packs sugar away into the tissues and into the liver. And thank God, because if we didn't have insulin, we would have diabetes. Insulin resistance is growing, and that leads to diabetes increasingly. And so diabetes is, in most parts of the world now, is becoming another big health issue. And it's mainly because we have too many carbs, too much sugar in the diet, because whenever we eat sugar, particularly sugar, there's more work for the insulin to do, so it gets more likely to get run down and tired. When you're on a keto diet, it's been observed that you get more insulin sensitive. So in other words, insulin works better. So you can reverse early stages of diabetes by switching to a keto, for example. Now, interestingly, many menstrual problems are linked to insulin resistance. And there's something called PCOS, which affects quite a lot of women now, in which the ovaries basically produce more hormone-producing cysts, Polycystic Ovary Syndrome. And that is increasingly linked with insulin resistance. So it affects people who are more likely to be in the pre-diabetic phase, or putting on weight and that sort of thing. The insulin resistance itself switches the hormone balance, and the menstrual cycle is a wonderful choreography. I mean, when you think about it, all around the world it's a pretty predictable cycle, and it runs itself. But if there's something like insulin resistance getting in the way, then that can disrupt the hormone. So someone like your girlfriend might find that switching to a keto diet abolishes or reduces that disruptor.
Yeah, I was just reading some stats on that. It said that 80% of women with PCOS have some degree of insulin resistance, even those who aren't overweight. And my girlfriend does have PCOS, which she's talked about publicly before. So it's no surprise that that when she comes off, she takes sugar out of her diet, her menstrual cycle seems to fall back in line. And I think there's also links to insulin resistance, PCOS, and I guess ovulation and fertility.
Yes. It is so. I think, the modern woman, the modern man for that matter, has a whole string of burdens to carry because we have too much sugar. I mean, when you think about it, sugar only emerged as a common ingredient, 140 years ago, 150 years ago. Up till that time, only very rich people could afford it. Then we had the industrial sugar production, and a lot of slaves over in the Americas producing vast amounts of cane sugar. That is a modern phenomenon, and our bodies weren't designed to deal with the amount of sugar that we now feed it. And it does put a strain on the system, and insulin is one of the guys caught in the mix.
So if you're trying to have kids, which we are now, I guess you want to remove the...
If that's a factor, I would be looking at reducing your sugar intake at the very least, yeah. I mean, I spend a lot of time with women who are having difficulty conceiving. And, I think I have about 13 herb babies, in other words, babies who were born with women who were having challenges getting pregnant. And that was mainly, I think, because we were stabilizing the menstrual cycle and making the fertile phase a bit more productive.
And what do you say to those women? What do you prescribe, I guess?
I do. I mean, that's my business. I will be prescribing. So you see there's some bottles there. Yeah. These are the sort of things that we use in the practice. So I've got a couple here that just, the smell sense. So this is fennel, which we all think we know, but these are very strong extractions that only practitioners use. So these are practitioner-owned supplies. And when you smell it, you realize that they are strong.
Ooh. Wow.
So a teaspoon of that is a really powerful. Now, if you really want to realize the power of herbs, this is a remedy called Echinacea, and a lot of people know about Echinacea, and it's a major supplement. This is a root extraction from a variety of a species of Echinacea called angustifolia. And I'm just going to put a little bit in there. I'm going to test it myself before I give it to you, so I'm not poisoning you. So you just take a little.
Do I put it on my skin or?
Put it on.
Or did you want me to shot that?
Just lick it.
Whoa. Wow.
So these are the sort of things, this is just a particularly striking example of the sort of things that we use in the practice. And so some of the women that come to me, for example, with fertility or menstrual problems, will go out with a mix of herbs drawn like this from about 100 or so different plants that I have on the shelves. And they are often, as I said earlier, remedies developed by women. And incidentally, North America is a prime site for some really powerful women's remedies. And interestingly, when you look at them, you find they contain plants equivalent of steroids. They're not steroids, but they seem to interact with our own hormone mechanisms. Some of them were particularly good at retiming the menstrual cycle, and the one or two that were particularly warned women should not take unless they wish to be pregnant. So effective were they? What's that doing to your tongue?
It's still right on the edge of my tongue. It's like it's more. So basically, for anyone that can't see what we're doing because you're listening on audio, he put a little drop of this solution, Echinacea, on my finger, and I licked it off my finger. And at first, I was like, there was this sort of taste journey, which was like, interesting. It kind of tastes like Maggi seasoning, some kind of food seasoning. I'm now 60 seconds later, and I can still, it's like got more intense.
It's a bit like fireworks going on.
Yeah, it's like fireworks going off in my mouth. And all it was a little lick of it.
Now, you see,
it's getting spicy
what we use that for is for infections or problems of the mouth and the throat particularly.
What's it doing?
Well, you have to use a bit of unscientific language here. But remember I talked about the Marines, the guys who do all the battling for us. A lot of them hang out. Their barracks are in the throat. We've got tonsils, we've got adenoids, we've got the glands that run down our neck here that sometimes get swelled up, if we've got an infection in this area. Yeah, you have to take something to take the taste away.
I'm trying to taste out my mouth.
It sometimes gets in the way of talking as well.
Yeah. And
I was hesitating before giving it to you. Didn't want to stop you in your steps. But what's that tingling? Cut as I said, a rather confusing story short. Those are constituents that almost seem to talk directly to those white blood cells and make them more active. And so Echinacea, in that form particularly, works primarily on the front line, shall we call it, of our immune system. These battlers that sit up there. And so often that's where you want to start the job. And you might have an infection somewhere else in the body. But if you can work up here with these guys, you can kick off all sorts of benefits. And as you've just discovered, it doesn't take long.
No. So who should be thinking about echinacea?
Certainly if you've got an upper respiratory problem, and you do need to get that tingle if you want to get that particular effect. I mean, you can have echinacea in other forms, pills and tablets and so on, and there are some which don't have that tingle factor. They got other elements to it. But for the tingle factor, it's anything to do with an infection that has a link to what's going on up here. And that could be for lower down in the gut as well, because our gut begins up here as well. But it could be a sinus problem. It could be a middle ear problem. It could be a throat problem. It could be a gum problem. We've got all sorts of gum problems and all sorts of problems we have with mouth. We've got a microbiome up here as well. This can, with one or two other things, some of the plants we use in this form contain resins. An example is frankincense. We've got some tablets there.
These ones?
Yeah, otherwise known as boswellia. And this just comes in the form of tablets. And they just look like any other tablets, except they're sort of greeny yellow color, because that's just ground up resin. Now,
what's resin?
Resin, we know about that because it's the sort of thing you get out of pine trees, that very tacky stuff. All we need to do is remember the Bible story. There were 3 gifts that the baby Jesus got, didn't he, for his birthday from those wise men. One was gold, fair enough. The other 2 were resins, myrrh and frankincense. This is the frankincense. I use myrrh in a liquid form, and you almost like you're lining the mouth with this resin. It's when you put some myrrh on the mouth, you definitely feel the mucosa firing up. And it was most widely used medicine. And the reason why it was so valued in those days by the 3 wise men is because myrrh was there. First of all, they had to bring it out of Africa, which is where it comes from. You remember the Queen of Sheba, who married Solomon, in the old Bible story. Queen of Sheba had the trade routes of East Africa sorted, so Solomon married wisely by marrying the Queen of Sheba, because she had the monopoly on myrrh, particularly, and on frankincense. Those, and echinacea, maybe with a bit of licorice to help it work well, are amazing at reducing infections in this area, in the mouth and the throat and the sinuses and the areas around.
It completely blows my mind that most people will lock their front door before they leave the house, but they'll sit in a coffee shop, connect to the public Wi-Fi, and log into their bank without a second thought. Every time you go online in a shop, in an airport or a hotel, you're trusting the Wi-Fi is safe. But often, it's not, which makes your online data vulnerable, because all it takes is one person with the wrong intentions to steal everything: your passwords, your private messages, even your identity. So let's talk about ExpressVPN, our sponsor. It stops hackers from stealing your data by creating a secure privacy tunnel between all of your devices and the internet in just one tap. That tunnel also keeps your online activity private from other third parties who might want to get your information. No one's getting past their encryption. And this is important to me because I'm working across multiple businesses most of the time, anywhere that I can get a Wi-Fi connection. And that's why I use ExpressVPN. And you can secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/DOAC. That's expressvpn.com/DOAC to get up to 4 extra months free. Make sure you keep what I'm about to say to yourself. I'm inviting 10,000 of you to come even deeper into the Diary of a CEO. Welcome to my inner circle. This is a brand new private community that I'm launching to the world. We have so many incredible things that happen that you are never shown. We have the briefs that are on my iPad when I'm recording the conversation. We have clips we've never released. We have behind the scenes conversations with the guests, and also the episodes that we've never, ever released, and so much more. In the circle, you'll have direct access to me. You can tell us what you want this show to be, who you want us to interview, and the types of conversations you would love us to have. But remember, for now, we're only inviting the first 10,000 people that join before it closes. So if you want to join our private closed community, head to the link in the description below or go to doaccircle.com. I will speak to you there. Do you think that things like water fasts, people are doing a lot of these sort of water fasts and these sort of 7-day prolonged fasts are effective medicines?
My usual answer when I'm faced with a question and or someone needs an answer from is to think back a bit. What did humans evolve to do? And when we were hunter-gatherers, which, was 300,000 or 400,000 years, we were hunter-gatherers, and what we're doing now is tiny. But we evolved to eat intermittently. When you're a hunter-gatherer, there are times when you're not eating at all, especially off-season, and you get very hungry, and then you eat a lot, and you have a big feast. So I think our systems were designed to be intermittent fasting, and fasting is probably part of our gene makeup. That's what we were, in a sense, meant to do. So the fundamental principle of fasting is probably right on. Issue is that sometimes if your metabolism, your digestion, your hormones or other functions are not at prime place, fasting, particularly if it's extended, can actually be damaging. So you do need a bit of advice if you're going down that route just to make sure it's okay for you.